Oh my God. Okay. It is not slow. That's pretty neat. Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt, and this is the new BMW 5 Series, and it comes in a couple new flavors, one of which is this fully electrified dual-motor i5 M60. And due to its zappy and electrical nature, it finds itself competing against rivals that it's not used to seeing. So thanks to our friends at International BMW, we're going to hit the highlights, the best and the rest, to see just how it stacks up against its rivals. And the first thing we have to address, as with pretty much any EV, is the range and the EV stuff. The i5 M60 here is rated at just about 260 miles of range. That is less than the 400 miles that you get in a Tesla Model S, and the Lucid Air is going to get similar, if not better, range than the Tesla. But it is a touch more than the 240 miles of range you're going to get in an Audi e-tron GT, and a little more than the 250 miles you'll get in the Porsche Taycan. And it's way more than the 225 miles you'll get in the comparable EQE AMG. So ultimately where it finds itself is at the top of the heap of the conventional legacy automakers, your Porsches, Audis, Mercedes, etc. But then when you compare it to bespoke American EV manufacturers like Lucid and Tesla, it is going to fall flat. But of course, what do you expect, taking an adapted internal combustion chassis and putting it up against a bespoke EV product? Kind of makes sense. And then there's power, and this is kind of another difficult one to touch on because the i5 M60 kind of finds itself in the middle of the pack, toward the top of the usual suspects, but not on the same plane as the Tesla and the Lucid, like kind of we've been saying. The i5 M60 here packs 593 horsepower and 586 pound-feet of torque, and it does feel super quick. At no point did I feel like I need more power, but these videos compare against the context of the opposition, the context of the rivals. And the i5 packs more power than an Audi e-tron GT. It packs less power than the Audi e-tron GT RS. And same thing with the Taycan versus the Taycan Turbo. It does pack less power than the 677 horsepower that you'll get in the EQE AMG. And it also packs less than the 620 horsepower you're going to get in the Lucid Air Touring. And then it goes up from there on the Lucid, but it has more than the Pure, the rear-wheel drive. And of course it has less than the 1,000 or whatever horsepower that you get in the Model S Plaid. But of course I will remind everyone that this is the M60 and not an i5M, so there could be even more power down the road. Get it? Down the road. But even still, this thing does 0 to 60 in closer to 3.5 seconds than 4 seconds. So like, is your luxury mid-size sedan not fast enough at that point? But with that, let's talk about all the places that this i5 M60 shines. So it may not have the most power or the most range, but it does have plenty of both. And when you compare it to all of the rivals that we've been talking about so far, it's actually on the affordable end of the spectrum, pretty significantly too. The i5 M60 starts at just over $81,000, and as tested, we creep just over $90,000. Sure, it's a lot of money, but it's a couple $1,000s less than the Tesla Model S Plaid. It's about $10,000 less than you'll get in a comparable Lucid Air Touring, and it's almost 30 grand less than an EQE AMG. And it's over 20K less than a base e-tron GT. The most surprising thing then is that the Porsche Taycan is actually the closest in terms of price, aside from the Tesla, but that's a base rear-wheel drive Taycan, and this has more power, more drive wheels, and more practicality. So this is a big win here at the wallet. And then there's the drive. Now here's the thing. These cars that we're talking about are kind of fringe competitors. So let's talk about the i5 for a second in just kind of its essence and what I'm feeling. This, in essence, is an M550 replacement. Do I miss the V8? Of course. But the M550 was more of a Fast 5 series than affordable M5. This i5 M60 is a beautiful continuation of that. This thing is heavy, but it is neck-snappingly fast, and it makes really fun sounds. But here's the thing, it's also a faultless luxury car. Adaptive dampers, of course, but you also have air suspension in the back, keeping things nice and level. You can option powered or active anti-roll bars, which will decouple to give you nice body motions and no jarring thuds over bumps. And then when you're heading into a corner, they'll reattach and keep things nice and neutral. And you have rear steer, so navigating small spaces and parking lots and stuff, it's not a problem at all. In the best way, this is kind of like a mini i7 with just blistering pace. And unfortunately, this is the most controversial thing about any BMW lately, and it's the look. But I think this new 5 Series looks great. You've got a light-up grille perimeter. It's mildly unnecessary, but you have it. And you have your radar slapped in the middle of the grille, but it's actually really not that noticeable in person. For this M60 here, you do get an M logo showing up in the grille, and of course, this one is draped in Brooklyn gray, which is probably the most popular color for any new BMW that I've seen in the last 2 years. You do get very reminiscent hood bulges of what we had in the i7, which I kind of like. And you've got very similar headlights to the X5 that we tested. Additionally, your lower fascia has kind of that black bleed into the grille that we saw in the X5 and X6 twins. Around the side, you have 20-inch wheels equipped here, and you can go up to 21s, but they will affect your aerodynamics and, of course, your range. And, of course, you do have M-wing mirrors and a Hofmeister kink out back with the 5 for the 5 Series embossed into it. And then around back, you have a black lip spoiler and some pretty subtle taillights. If I had to rank my favorites in terms of look, I would go Taycan, eTron GT in the proper spec, of course, and then Model S in plaid only with the arachnid wheels, and then this i5, and then the Lucid Air below that, and then the EQE, of course, at the bottom of the heap. And then there's the gaming gimmick, and this is all brought to you by the question of what do you do when you're charging? This i5 is built on the 400-volt architecture, which means you'll charge from 10 to 80% in about 30 minutes. And you can play games on the center screen with your phone while you're charging. And it's just kind of fun. It's a total gimmick. You're probably going to charge 90+% of the time at home, and that means you'll probably never use this. But it is good to see some levity and having some fun in Munich. And just in the interest of being thorough, you will get more like normal entertainment things in your Tesla, plus you'll get a screen in your back seat. You can watch like Netflix or whatever. But I have to say, it's just kind of nice to have something like this. It's good to see manufacturers thinking about how can we inject some personality and give some people a little something to do while they're charging their car. And then as far as trunk and cargo capacity goes, it's pretty normal and conventional here, actually. It's a normal sedan trunk. It's much bigger than you'll get in the EQE, though, and it's bigger than you'll get in the Taycan and the eTron GT. But it is going to be a little bit smaller than Lucid's trunk, but it looks more normal and doesn't make the rear look strange. And you don't get a frunk like you would in the Tesla and the Lucid, and of course it's not a hatch style like you'd get in the Tesla. So from a storage and cargo perspective, the Tesla Model S is in fact and unquestionably the most practical, but this is still plenty practical, it has to be said. And then the rear seats here are totally practical as well. You have a lot more space in the back here than you would in the Audi e-tron GT or the Porsche Taycan. You have similar rear seat space to the EQE, maybe a hair less, and you maybe have a little bit less than you would in the Lucid and the Tesla. But it still is a great size. The floor does feel a little high under the footwell. I can tap my toe against the bottom of the front seats, and you do have a drivetrain tunnel reminding you that this is an adapted internal combustion chassis. But you can get heated rear seats back here. You weirdly don't get rear seat pockets, but you do have the activity mount for something like an iPad on the back of the front seats. Plus you have really cool Bowers speakers and nice pano roof, and it's just really comfy back here. It's perfectly fine. And what BMW would be complete without tech features? You've got a full color head-up display, it's very good, like 3 different ways to customize. You've got a fully digital instrument cluster, like 7 to 11 different ways to customize and see things. But this is all running on an updated iDrive 8.5. So you've got new graphics, the climate menu makes more sense and is better. You can also set your footwell temp independently of your upper body temp, which is kind of cool. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, your native navigation system also works very, very well for identifying chargers and how you can plan your route better and more efficiently to maximize your time on the road and less time at the charger itself. The Mercedes will do more to dazzle you visually with something like a hyperscreen, and the Tesla has more like everyday features like the ability to watch Netflix or whatever, but I've never once behind the wheel or anywhere around this thing felt like I'm missing anything in this i5. And then I want to touch briefly, because I think it's important, I want to touch on the design and some of the luxury bits that you get in here. For one, you get the crystal effect like we're used to seeing in some of the more upscale BMWs, and your dash has that crushed glass design that we first saw in the i7 and love so much. Your speaker covers, the Bowers, are really, really cool to look at as well. And of course you've got that pano roof. You've got heated and cooled seats, heated steering wheel, and you can get heated rear seats. This is where the BMW feels like a true and bona fide luxury product, which isn't always something that can be said about some of the Lucid stuff, and of course the Tesla, full stop. And one of the last things we're going to talk about is the Autopilot system here, because it is fan-freaking-tastic. You've got driver assist plus here, and it's amazing. You don't get adaptive cruise as standard, which is a bit odd, but you do have level 2 autonomy here, so the car will actually request to change lanes for you if you come up on a slower vehicle. So the BMW will be like, hey man, you want to get around this guy? And you can confirm it by looking into the mirror of whatever direction it will probably be to the left, but whatever mirror that it's suggesting that you go across through. It's awesome. It's super cool. Plus, this is like the same system that we used in the i7, which was faultless through construction, totally hands-off on the highway for like hours at a time, seemingly. That's how I used it, and it's awesome. It's just a really good autopilot suite. It makes highway cruising like so easy, and I really like it. But with that, we're gonna strap the GoPro on and do a little drive. I'm gonna be honest, that sound never gets old. All right, let's hit it. Oh my God. Okay, it is not slow. That's pretty neat. That is pretty neat. So yeah, like 600 horsepower, just under, 590 pound-feet of torque. Like, okay, here's the thing. We've been saying all video that, you know, in comparison to the Lucid and the Tesla and, you know, the Taycan Turbo and RS eTron GT and AMG, it's got less power, but, ooh, I mean, at no point am I feeling like, yeah, this could use another 200 horsepower. This needs to be faster. The people that are needing that are interested in just having the fastest car, the most powerful car. But on the road, like a normal person will be driving, this is more than enough power. And you've got the iconic sounds from Hans Zimmer. They've got a new startup and shutdown sound, which is kind of fun. But man, this thing is just fast. Oh, it's quick. Oh, it's quick and it holds on. Now this has active air suspension. It has air suspension in the back. It's got adaptive dampers, so we're in firm setting now in sport. The steering has really firmed up. In comfort, this is very light, very, very light. So it firms up, hefts up in sport, which is great, but the chassis composition is great. I can feel like I know kind of where the natural limits of traction are through a corner. It's predictable. I don't get a huge amount of feedback or feel from the steering, but I'm not really expecting that. This thing is big and it's heavy, but it is just blisteringly fast. And the brakes are excellent as well. Just another one for fun. Good Lord, is it fast. Now that kind of leads me to the ethos of this car a little bit. Now it's an i5 M60, not an i5M, right? So it's actually just kind of, what it ends up being is kind of a replacement for the M550 in the lineup. And the M550 is just like, it's got V8 experience, it makes V8 sounds like the M5, it's fast like the M5, but it leans more on the 5 Series than the M side of things, if you kind of know what I mean. It's way easier to live with on a day-to-day basis. It's not nearly as stiffly sprung, and that's kind of what you're getting here. Like, there's a bunch of M logos all over this car. Look at this rear steer work. Man! There's a bunch of M logos all over this car, and it is, like, neck-snappingly fast. It is perfectly fast enough. But it is very luxury inclined. Like, now that I'm just in personal mode, I've got the soft dampers on, like, these roads are terrible, but you wouldn't be able to tell because it's super quiet in here. The ride is excellent. It very much feels like it's luxury car first. It's more of like a smaller 7 Series than a bigger 3 Series. It's got less dynamic, twitchy, sporting pretensions and more of like big power, cushy, almost GT car type inclinations. And ultimately what that means is it's a good luxury car. This, in personal or efficient, when you're gonna get your max range, this is kind of when the car is at its best. It's really natural luxury car experience, but that's why they give you this little paddle here on the left. This is why they give you the boost paddle, because you wanna probably stay in this, but then you do want the power. Oh, the full power at a moment's notice. And that's what the boost paddle's for. I don't have to go into my modes and then go into sport and worry about traction or anything. I can just, oh, I'm cruising casually here. No, I want mega power. Oh, I really like this thing. That's a good time for the final thoughts. So that is the best and the rest of the new BMW i5 M60. I really like this thing, actually. It's not necessarily the best in any one metric, but I have to say it's one of, if not the most well-rounded in the segment. So thanks again to our friends at International BMW for letting us have a go, and we'll see you in the next one.